We were aware that interracial marriages were forbidden in North Carolina. So we knew that in order to get married, we had to leave the state. So, again, we just did what we had to do. And since we had to leave the state, although that wasn't the closest place possible, we decided to go to the Baha'i temple in Chicago and got married there.
So it was a challenge kind of choosing Chicago because that was costly, to get up there and get back and all of that. But all in all, we decided that that was what we really wanted. Neither of us had visited the Baha'i House of Worship in Chicago, so we both looked forward to that possibility.
And we were so excited. We got there, it was a Thursday afternoon, about 4 or 5-ish, and just ran around watching the temple from all sides. And the poor lady who was the representative of the LSA said, "Come on, kids, get married first, and then you can, you can look around all you want afterwards." So there was nobody there, family or anything, just 2 witnesses. And we got married and I left that same day, and I think spent one night on the road, and we came back to Asheville to have our reception. And we were going to have the reception at the YWCA, probably one of the only places that you could have an interracial meeting. And so that was very interesting because as we were dancing on the dance floor, I pointed to some people and I was saying, "Jack, are those your friends or people you invited?" He said, "No, I thought you knew them." So we discovered that a lot of townspeople had just shown up to see if this really was going to happen or not.
Which was really very understandable because at that time, as the word got around, I had some friends there, of course, and went to school there and all of that. So many people knew I'm getting married and then who am I marrying and all of this. So I knew many people came to say, well, I'm going to this thing. I'm going to go see this with my own eyes. And they went there, and again, some kind of sheepishly, said, well, I'm saying, yeah, everything is cool. Everything is really okay. But knowing, and I understood that. Some people wanted to experience this. This is the first time anything like this has happened in Asheville or in North Carolina that anybody knew of. But it was lovely. It was wonderful. There was no negative feelings. And by the way, several years later, after our reception there, my mother kind of casually informed me that there had been a bomb scare that night. She didn't tell me, and she didn't mention it to anyone, but later on she shared that there had been a bomb scare that night.
After we got married, within 7 or 8 years, we left Asheville. We went to Atlanta, and then we came here to Montgomery. So for our 25th wedding anniversary, we decided to go back and celebrate it in Asheville. And by that time, there was a very strong Baha'i community there. And they did an amazing job of publicizing this event because we went back to the same YWCA, and they had arranged for interviewers to come and interview us before the party, and then they announced it, and they came to the party, covered that, and played it 2 nights in a row on prime time, saying basically how Asheville has changed, and we're so happy this couple is back here to celebrate their 25th anniversary. And in fact, our son Hami was then 12 years old, and we would be, because people had seen us on TV, we would be walking down the street and regular people would just come and shake our hands and say, we're happy you're back, we have changed. So that was a wonderful experience for us.
At the fireside and with Baha'i activities, I found myself with people in that we talked about things that were important in life. We talked about things that mattered. We could talk about God and purpose and being and community and those things. At one of these meetings that I was attending then regularly, there was this, well, actually there were many students who came to the meetings from Warren Wilson College. And this particular night, there was a special one that came, really, really cute, quite small, foreign, whatever, but something special about her. And I thought, wow, this really, you know, this is going to require a little attention here, because this may be something. And so that was Fafa's first meeting. She came, she was quiet, but there was really something special about her from the first time that I saw her. And I kind of kiddingly told one of my friends that was with me at the fireside that I think I'm going to marry that one. You know, that was a little boastful, and, you know, at that time that was quite appropriate. But clearly there was something there. We were special, even though we didn't do a lot of talking initially and flirting and all of that stuff. It was just being aware in her presence and letting her know of my awareness and observing and all of that. You know, much of this was just kind of spiritual as to the vibes that were taking place between us.
Jack had been investigating the Baha'i faith about 10 months before I came. So it really felt like God was preparing him, us, for this encounter. That first night that he's talking about, I don't remember meeting him because it was a big crowd. And of course, I was meeting a lot of people. It was my first night at the Tuckers. So, but as he said, gradually, as we were involved both, of course, in the Baha'i activities, there definitely was a connection and a specialness. And however, in my mind, I had just come to go to school for 4 years and go back, so marriage was not at all.
Oftentimes, Fafa would be oblivious to what was going on around us because she was just being normal. And so, you know, I remember at one point I had a convertible automobile, and of course, during these times we would sit close together and stuff. And Fafa would just be completely oblivious. We're just going along and whatever. And under certain circumstances, I would kind of carefully encourage her, well, Fafa, maybe you should move over to the passenger seat right now.
Why?
And in certain situations, like we were to go into a restaurant, and I would notice people getting a little antsy, and they would stop eating and focus on us and whatever. And I would say to Fafa at some point, like, well, Fafa, maybe we should kind of get done. You know, it's no big deal. Let's get on out of this place, whatever. But you know, just knowing that there is danger, and that when people start getting funny, mobilizing, going outside and coming back and doing funny things, that, you know, it's time to get out of there. It's time to leave. And so I felt the worst thing that could happen is for Fafa or I to show fear.
That's right.
That would be an invitation. Like, they're scared of us. So yes. So how do we be in places that were often recently segregated. How could we be in these places? And yeah, and knowing that people are sitting there burning, their hearts and their soul were burning. What are you doing? How dare you? You know, these kinds of things, these feelings. And so, you know, there are next steps to those things. And how do we be and be together and have our lives and be fun and all of that, and also navigate being normal when abnormal is what everybody expects and are confused by when, yeah. So again, those things were never far away from my mind. I mean, I always knew I'm in the South and these people will kill you. They will kill you. I know that. And when you get that stony, cold look, and these people can't speak and talk and whatever, that, you know, that's on a pathway to something that could be ugly. And so, but that's life too. We're not going to give our lives away because of that. But we're also not going to be foolish. As a young person, as a child growing up in the South, as a black child growing up in the South, all of these conflicts and all of this confusion and all of this energy around race and all of this required of me to make some sense of it, required of me to kind of understand what was going on. And I remember once there was a time, you know, again, at being at home alone at this particular time, I remember I took one of my mother's mirrors, a little hand mirror, and I examined my face. I looked at my hair, I looked at my face, I looked at my eyes, and I came to the conclusion, I decided that my looks were okay. Now, in the South, there, everything hinged upon black and white, the looks, the nappy hair, the thick lips, the blonde hair, the thin lips, and all of that other stuff. It was a major thing. And so I decided, you know, 7, 8, 10 years old, that my looks were okay, that I was satisfied, and I felt like as a being, God was satisfied with my looks, I was satisfied with my looks. And I decided that if anybody had a problem with my looks, my color, whatever, that they had a problem, and I was not going to worry, or I didn't have to deal with that. And that was interesting because at some other point, it became clear to me that there was a lot of hatred and suspicion and anger and frustration that also accompanied race, and that a lot of black folk really would profess that they hated white folks. Well, it's pretty obvious that a lot of white folk hated black folk or whatever. So, you know, as a young person, it came to me that I needed to think about and what my place was, whether I'm going to hate white folk and which camp I was going to be in, so to speak. This was a conscious process for me. And so I thought I would try out, because being politically correct was important. So I thought I would try out hating white folk. You know, let me just get into that, you know, to hate white folk just like many others around me, you know, whatever. And, you know, that felt like a lot of work. You know, this is a lot of work. I'm gonna have to do a lot of extra stuff and carry around a lot of extra stuff to hate these folk. I mean, I can do that. I can train myself to hate them, because there's plenty of reasons to, you know, I mean, seriously. I mean, the fact that, you know, as a younger person, getting on the bus, paying full fare, sitting in the back, and when the bus got full, if there was no room in this little quadrant in the back, then we stood up. Whereas white folk, they came in on the bus, they sit anywhere they want to. When their space was crowded up, hell, they came back to our space and sat in our seats, and that was okay. And so all of those kinds of things, you know, mother going to town and, you know, in certain stores she couldn't try on a hat. She could pay for it, but she couldn't try it on. You know, those kinds of things. It's like, it would be real easy to hate white folk. I mean, to really seriously just kind of put them out of your life and whatever. But again, for me, that was the kind of work and the kind of burden that I decided I don't want to carry around. So what are my options? That I would deal with white folk on an individual basis and collectively as the way they are. I saw racism, I understood hatred and all of that, but I would not hate individual people. And as I dealt with them, if that required me putting them out of my life or discounting them or whatever, I would do that. But I would not carry the burden of hating white folk. Also, I would trust myself. I would trust myself to be smart enough with white folk to deal with them politically and socially in a sane, in a correct way. In other words, I'm not going to take any crap. I'm not going to be abused. I'm not going to pretend reality is not what it is. I'm not going to go through all those kinds of changes, but I am not also going to become something different from who I really felt I am in order to respond to their negativeness, into their racism, into their insanity, into their craziness. I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to recognize that many white people are like me. They're good, they're open, they're honest, they're thoughtful, they're caring, and so forth. And when I meet those people, I would meet them on a level playing field, and I would go as far as loving them and caring for them and doing whatever for them as I would my brother or my mother or my father. And to me, that was freedom. That was my deciding that the whole system of race in America would not define me and would not dictate my behavior beyond what I chose to, how I chose to behave and who I chose to be. That came to be something that really influenced my life, my work, and who I am in terms of race and a human being in a nation that doesn't fully understand what humanity is and is unable to recognize humanity in all of its forms.